No, thank you. Sleepy. Can you come back in an hour?
Need sleepy.
Please go away. Let me sleep for the love of God!
It's now time for the Billy C. Morning Show, part of the Billy C. Boxing Network. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're coming to you live from the Billy C. Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C. Morning Show. Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing all right. Hope everybody had a great weekend as fall officially is here. Today's show is being brought to you in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located in St. Simons Island, Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Today's show is also being brought to you in part by GGG Boxing Magazine, and their next issue is due out soon. You can check out our website, www.billycboxing.com, and click on the JKJ Boxing Magazine cover. Dax Khan is going to have an article in the next issue, so keep your eyes out for that one. And today's show is also being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold, and you can literally get a copy of it right now. By going to barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. And remember, I'm going to be doing a book signing. There's a book fair. It's a book event on November 6th, Sunday, November 6th, at the Queensberry Hotel in Glens Falls, New York. If you're going to be in the area, make sure you swing by between 10 and 2 p.m. I will be there with copies of my book to sell at a discount price, sign it, and talk boxing with you. So mark that down. If you need information, drop me an email, billy@talkinboxing. That's TALKINBOXING.com. Before we get started here, sad note, very sad note in the sport of boxing. Aaron Pryor, the Hawk, passed away over the weekend. It was early Sunday morning. He was just shy of 61 years old. Reports are that he had heart failure. Aaron, the Hawk Pryor, was a former world junior welterweight champion, was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1996, known for being one of the best pound-for-pound fighters of all time. Especially his two epic fights with Alexis Arguello has solidified both of those guys joined together in history. Now, both of them are no longer with us. Aaron Pryor had a record of 39 wins, 35 coming by knockout, with only one loss. This guy is regarded as one of the best, not only of his era, but of all time in the junior welterweight division. And joining me right now, a guy that actually sparred and worked out with Aaron Pryor on numerous occasions, prepared him for several of his fights, is our very own Sal Rocky Senecola. What's up, Sal?
Good morning, Bill. How are you today, buddy?
Oh, not too bad. I know you are still battling the hurricane down south, but the show goes on, and this morning we kind of have heavy hearts. I know you and I spoke briefly yesterday on the passing of Aaron Pryor. What can you share with us about your personal experiences with Aaron and what your thoughts on him overall from the boxing point of view can be expressed from you?
Well, you know, there are so many thoughts I could share about Aaron. He was truly one of the greatest ever. Definitely pound for pound as a junior welterweight. They didn't come much tougher. You know, he had a reputation as the Hawk and being so heavy-handed. And when you first met Aaron Pryor and shook his hand, he had massive hands, like Roberto Duran, big hands and solid. And that's why they're heavy-handed, and that's why they were known as devastating punchers. Aaron was a true champion, a heart of a lion. He never backed away from a challenge. He came in the ring to do one thing, to fight and to win. And I had the honor of sparring hundreds of rounds with Aaron and running and training and getting to know him personally, sharing meals and sharing weeks on end in training camp. I was very, very upset when I heard the news, and the last time I had the opportunity to actually see and speak and enjoy some time with Aaron was when you, John, and I, a few years back, were up in Canastota for the Boxing Hall of Fame, and Aaron and I had a chance to meet at Graziano's restaurant and talk about the good old days and rehash some things, and we had some smiles, some laughs, and I'll tell you, it was a great day to see him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that he's no longer with us. I will have some more time to reflect on Aaron Pryor's career later in the week, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff out on him. And for any of you younger fans that have never gotten an opportunity to see him fight, please punch up on YouTube some of his fights. You'll see what we're talking about. Our thoughts, prayers, and condolences go out to the family and friends of the late, great Aaron Pryor, who just recently passed yesterday. So it's a shame, man. No doubt about that. Only 60 years old, 61 years old, they're saying, but actual age 60 years old. I guess in a couple of weeks he would have turned 61 on October 20th. So sad news when you have to report such a concrete piece of boxing history to kick off a show. You know what I mean, Sal?
Oh no, it's hard because, like I said, I first got the news from our very own Henry Haskell, the New Jersey Boxing Hall of Fame president, who's a plethora of knowledge and trivia and just facts, black and white. And too many of our past heroes and idols and great professionals across the board in the profession of boxing, whether you're a referee, doctor, this and that. Henry will always send out a little bit of a condolences and things to the family members and a little bit of an article that's attached. And when I saw that come over yesterday morning about Aaron Pryor, my heart just sunk. And, immediately, I'm getting chills right now because, like I said, I spent a lot of time with Aaron. He had a lot of demons, like a lot of fighters. We all have our little dragons we have to slay, and we do it in our own way. And, but you know what? No matter what, when that bell rang, Aaron only knew one thing, and one thing only. And I'll tell you, he used to talk about this. It was tunnel vision. It was tunnel vision. That's exactly what he used to say. Sal, you got to have tunnel vision. And I knew exactly what he meant because that's what I had is tunnel vision. But Aaron would talk about tunnel vision. He'd talk about little slogans that you hear me say. He'd always say, you got to fight to win or keep on punching. These were all the things that he used to always come out with. And, of course, Hawk Time. And, I remember being in camp and rallying, and Richie Cicchetti was there. Lee Catalino was there, heavyweight contender. Sylvester Stallone was there. We had a great camp in Culver City in California. And, for about 8 weeks, I had the opportunity to live with Aaron and just train. And one of his last successful title defenses, I sparred with him probably close to 1,000 rounds over an 8-week period. And it was his last successful defense was against Gary Hinton, which I was actually supposed to fight on the undercard at the Sands Casino. And I got a cut like 2 days before, 3 days before, just wrapping up sparring. I got a butt in Jersey, but that stopped that. But anyway, Aaron was just like a regular guy. He loved life. He looked for the bright side of life. But like I said, he had some demons, and he learned how to challenge and to beat them and to slay them, I think, as he got older, especially after boxing. And he was a champion. I loved Aaron, and I always will. I'll always speak very highly of Aaron. He was a great champion, and I'm going to miss him. And I am so grateful that I did have a chance just a few years ago to spend some good quality time and talk about some great things that we both remembered, and had a great couple laughs too. But my condolences to his family.
I appreciate your thoughts on him real quickly. The one thing that sticks out with me, obviously I didn't know him as on a personal level like you did, Sal, but I was up at the Hall of Fame one year, and it was immediately after Alexis Arguello passed, and they were doing a tribute to Alexis Arguello, and of course Aaron Pryor stood up and spoke. And I was really moved with the I don't know what choice of words I should use, but how genuine Aaron Pryor was with his loss and his feelings for the loss of Alexis Arguello. He stood up and really gave praise to a guy that they fought 2 wars against each other, and he was teary-eyed and could hardly speak clearly. And it dawned on me that day of how, when fighters, regardless of, how vicious they are in the ring, the amount of respect that they gain for each other is amazing. So, he will definitely be missed. And like I said, we'll talk a little more about him later on. There's a decent article Dax Khan wrote, we just posted up on BillyCBoxing.com about Aaron Pryor, so check that out up on BillyCBoxing.com. Coming up a little bit later in the week, we'll be doing our Blast from the Past on Eddie Perkins, former world champion. Alex Papali will join me for that. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is we got a bunch of emails to read, but some movement in the heavyweight division is going on right now. Some crazy stuff, really, we'll get to. But first and foremost, I want to talk about the Triple G Gennady Jacobs projected fight that was supposed to take place or is scheduled to take place in December. And if you guys recall, Daniel Jacobs was saying that he wanted to fight. The WBA has ordered the fight, and the 2 sides have been negotiating. But it's come out over the last 2 days that, Daniel Jacobs and his team are really trying hard to postpone this fight. They both have offered that they each get to fight a fight before the fight. Then Jacobs is demanding the WBA to modify their purse distribution rules, which state that Triple G is entitled to 75%. And Jacobs is entitled to 25%. They want to change that to 60-40 in favor of Triple G. So it's starting to sound like Daniel Jacobs and his team, and let's make sure you put that part of it in, and his team, because this very well may be the powers that be are making this. But Sal, once again, we got guys pounding on their chest, calling out Triple G. Triple G says, okay, and then the plethora of excuses. What's your thoughts on the latest on this particular fight?
Well, it's like you said, Bill. It's you say you're going to fight. You say you're up for the challenge and everything else. And to your credit, I think you're right on. Well, you don't know if it's coming from the fighter or from the team. And I just think that this is part of the rhetoric and part of the bull and part of the minutia that get thrown in there to act like it's a wrench to foul up the whole thing, and now it's going to be having to renegotiate and to redo all the stuff, and maybe have a fight not even take place now. Who knows? You got to get fuzzy and warm when you come to the table and negotiate these things hard on first. But this should have already been settled, isolated, and done, completed, and signed, sealed, delivered.
One of the things that I know you're going to hear people saying, hey, Daniel Jacobs wanted to fight, et cetera, et cetera. Tim Loeffler, the president of K2, has said to the WBA, hey, let's just go to the purse bid because these guys aren't negotiating with us, which is an indication to me, Sal, that they really want to push to make this fight happen. They don't care where it is or anything like that. They just want to make it happen sooner than later. And the purse bid was scheduled to go on October 12th, 2 days from now. So We'll be looking forward to see what happens. I potentially would not be surprised if I see it go to purse bid. Someone other than PBC or K2 wins the purse bid. Somebody else comes in out of left field, wins the purse bid, and Daniel Jacobs giving up his title rather than fighting Triple G. What do you think?
I think that would be really a bad setback in the division and in the whole thing right here, and that mix of Triple G and the credibility and everything else. I mean, Daniel Jacobs is a contender, is a chance to fight, and this is what you got to do. And like I said, I like to see fights come to fruition and all set and signed, sealed, delivered, and then no room for mistake, error, or rhetoric. It's done. Do it and get it signed, sealed, and delivered. I think it would be a big throwback, and it would hurt the whole division right there with Triple G.
Speaking of signed, sealed, and delivered, a lot of stuff has taken place in the heavyweight division over the last few days. Let's go back for a second to when, again, the WBA interim heavyweight champion Luis Ortiz bought out his contract with Golden Boy several weeks back for $1 million, and has kind of been in limbo. Now, the WBA has this tournament among themselves going on, and it's kind of crazy to follow the bouncing boxing glove, but it was announced over the weekend that Luis Ortiz has signed with Matchroom Boxing, which is kind of a shocker to me, because the plan, which includes his first fight on November 12th in Monte Carlo under the Matchroom Boxing banner, is against Malik Scott. And to me, this is a step back for Luis Ortiz. He was right in the mix, and because he signed with a new promoter, they want to get him a win. They want to get some fanfare going. But this is a guy that's already established, Sal. I mean, why would he make this move? I'm not knocking Matchroom, because I think Matchroom is one of the better promotional companies, but it almost seems like they sold a bill of goods to Luis Ortiz that he needs to be built up, he needs to be brought along, and all this stuff, when in fact he's already there. Golden Boy has already done that. A fight with Malik Scott does nothing for him. I'm surprised they haven't tried to move him into the middle of the mix. And meanwhile, Bob Arum has indicated that Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz Jr., who Andy Ruiz Jr. has no business fighting for any kind of a world title. I don't care whose it is, let alone the WBO's. And according to Bob Arum, this fight is pretty much done. So it seems like the writing on the wall for Tyson Fury's, at least his WBO title, is going to be up for grabs. What's your thoughts on these two issues in the heavyweight division?
Well, it is something. Now, that the thing with Luis Ortiz is, you never know what the bait to carrot is. To make him change, to make him step back, to make him do what he's got to do. And that's usually the incentive. Most fighters will look at the money, and you don't know what kind of, like I said, what incentive, what bait was out there, and what was promised. I mean, like you said, he's established. So basically, that's the hardest part of the career, is being established, getting some credibility, being maneuvered into position, and having the management team that's going to, and the promotional team that's going to leverage you in the future on all levels. And so maybe there's something we know that he knows that we are not privy to at this point. But I don't follow that train of thought and understanding on that level with Luis Ortiz. And on the other issue with Tyson Fury, I think I expressed pretty much vocally what I felt about him too. And I think if he had a date where he had to defend the title and he's going to be unable to fulfill that date, the demands, well, then I think the title should be taken away from him and up for bid. And not to say he's going to start all over. I think he should always be able to get an opportunity in the future. But as I said, I'm going from the old books. My father was an old wise Italian, and when something wasn't broke, don't fix it. It always just sees that, everybody's trying to redo and refix, and all the boxing rules, regulations that made it stellar. And when you do that, you take away.
let's add one more facet to the WBC. To the heavyweight division, and that's the WBC. They issued a statement on Friday concerning the WBC portion of the belt, and it all has to do with Alexander Povetkin and his scheduled fight with Deontay Wilder, which we all know was canceled due to a report that Povetkin tested positive for a substance that had just been added onto the banned substance list. Now, subsequently, make a long story short, they ended up giving him the okay. It was proven that he indeed tested clean, and that the trace of the test was a result of prior to being put on the band, et cetera, et cetera. So the WBC has ordered a interim fight due to the fact that Deontay Wilder has injured his hand and will not be able to fight until January. And they've ordered a interim fight between Alexander Povetkin and Bermane Stiverne, which is up for purse bid, I believe, today. But here's the thing: there was a lawsuit that was started from Deontay Wilder's team, and according to the WBC, Deontay Wilder's still moving forward with this. Now, should he win this lawsuit against Alexander Povetkin, regardless if Povetkin beats Stiverne or not in the interim ordered fight by the WBC, Deontay Wilder doesn't have to fight him, and that Alexander Povetkin gets stripped of his interim belt. To me, I'm asking myself this, Sal. Why is Wilder even moving forward with this lawsuit? He's in a position to make way more money as it sits right now. Number one, he's already fought and got a fight out of the way in a payday. He will. It looks like he'll fight in early 2017 against the winner of this interim belt, and so he adds another fight to the mix. Plus, he would be, making more money with the fight against Povetkin. It seems to me that Team Wilder is trying to avoid Povetkin at all costs. What do you think?
No, really? Do you think it's that obvious?
I do.
I can't believe it.
I do.
Wow, that is pretty much as some of the hurricane blasts I had to avoid, and we had to go through last week. Now we're still cleaning up. I'll tell you, and I'm driving to get some things done to get back on the island right now, but I will tell you why. That is so much just, again, the rhetoric and the bull that takes away from what this sport is all about. That's get in a ring and fight. What are you going to sue the guy for? You got an issue. You got some things here. Get in the ring, wait your turn, and go get him. And let's see your money, and let's see your fist do the talking.
It just seems
and winning the power. It seems not trivial. It just seems like, well, why? You want to show you're the baddest guy around and everything else, and you're going to get in the ring with the guy. So why do these extra steps here? It's inevitable. But I don't agree.
Well, it just seems that, and the connection here is the PBC. It seems like the PBC fighters really try their hardest to avoid the real fights. I mean, they all want these layup fights. Look, Gennady Golovkin pounded on his chest. I want Triple G. Now, not so much. Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder pounds his chest. I'm the best heavyweight in the world. I'll fight anybody. I want to stay busy. And they order Povetkin. And next thing you know, he's still got a lawsuit going on, even though the WBC kind of favored in Wilder's favor by forcing Povetkin to fight another fight before the one that was already ordered. So I don't know. I think these guys are frauds with a capital F. I got a couple of emails I want to read. Dax Khan is going to be joining us here in about 10 minutes to give us his thoughts on Aaron Pryor in the heavyweight division. But before I read a couple of emails, I want to get everybody caught up in the football and baseball worlds. First and foremost, in Major League Baseball, the Nationals beat the Dodgers yesterday 5-2 to even up that series, one apiece. Now the Cubs, they play, I believe, tonight or tomorrow They beat in their last game. They beat the Giants 5-2. Now they lead that series 2-0. As do the Indians over in the American League. Their game yesterday with the Red Sox was postponed due to rain, but they lead that series 2-0 over the Boston Red Sox. The Indians do. My personal feeling is I'd love to see the Indians and Cubs in the World Series, two storied franchises who haven't been in the World Series in a bit. Playing each other would be great. And as far as the rest of the AL, Toronto Blue Jays swept the Rangers yesterday 7-6 to win that series. So they sit and wait to see who they get to play, whether it be the Indians or an improbable 3 games in a row victories for the Red Sox. So it looks like the Toronto Blue Jays will be taking on the Cleveland Indians for the divisional series game. And then we still have to wait to see what happens with the Cubs and the Nationals. Now, over in the National Football League, the Patriots, everybody was worried about Tom Brady coming back with some rust. Forget about it. He beat up on the Browns 33-13, had a great day passing, led the NFL as far as I saw in terms of the stats. 33-13 Patriots over the Browns. The Lions topped the Eagles 24-23. The Colts beat the Bears 29-23. Titans over the Dolphins 30-17. There's only one team sadder than the Dolphins, and that's my team, the Jets. The Skins, that's the Redskins. They beat the Ravens 16-10. The Vikings undefeated 31-13 over the Texans. The Steelers slapped around my hapless Jets, who are pathetic with a capital P. Fitzpatrick did nothing to garner any kind of praise, but that defense and the coaching staff should be play an ostrich role today and stick their heads in the ground. Embarrassing loss for the New York Jets and for us, the fans. Terrible. The Falcons beat the Broncos 23-16. Cowboys over the Bengals 28-14. Cowboys look like they are the team to beat in the NFC East, although I wouldn't count the Eagles out at this point. The Bills, they're giving New England a race, huh? Their 30-19 win over the Rams solidifies their second place position in the AFC East. The Raiders keep finding ways to win. The Raiders come from behind in all their games. I mean, they should just start the Raiders games with them down by a couple of touchdowns, and maybe they can score quickly. They win 34-31 over the Chargers, and the Packers beat up on the Giants 23-16. That game wasn't as close as the score indicates. The Giants and the Jets.
I saw the game. It was painful.
Yeah, Giants and the Jets going down in flames. But let's get some emails. I got a couple of thoughts from our man Brett from Canada. He says, "Hey, Billy C and Sal, I must say, for being out of the ring for over a year, I was impressed with Diego Magladano's performance on Friday. His footwork, head movement, and punch combinations were pretty crisp, especially his body shots and hooks to the head. I will say this, though, he is no world beater, and I don't think he has the pop on his punches to do damage against world-class opposition. He looked good, but he should have against a B-level fighter." I agree with Brett, but again, this is what boxing's become. When you have a name and you have a promoter, you become the A side, and they feed you cupcakes, and they just keep their fingers crossed. Like his next comment here, he says, "I think Ricky Burns was extremely fortunate that he won the middle rounds against Reekley to come out with the win. In the early and late rounds of the fight, it was Reekley who was letting his hands go, cutting the ring off, and keeping Burns on his back feet. Reekley came to fight, but Burns had the experience and was able to figure him out. It's going to be interesting to see if the fight between Burns and Broner comes to fruition or not. Not sure who to take in that one. I tell you this, Burns who I've been a big fan of Ricky Burns for years. I think his skill set has clearly diminished, and I would favor Adrian Broner in that one as much as I'd hate to do it. He says it's going to be interesting to see how Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing move newly signed Luis Ortiz. He's supposed to make his debut in November and be very active over the next couple of months, said Hearn, in order to get him a title shot. The second fight is supposed to be on the Anthony Joshua card, with Ortiz and Joshua both promoted by Matchroom. The world title fight should be fairly easy to make, and that would be a good one, better than Klitschko-Joshua. First of all, Brett, I guess you forgot, and I think Eddie Hearn forgot, that Luis Ortiz kind of already has a belt. He has the WBA interim world heavyweight title, so he basically has a belt, and he's in line to fight. So not sure about that move there. As far as Ortiz and Joshua, I love that fight, but a better fight than Joshua and Klitschko, I'm not so sure. I think Klitschko and Joshua will fight first. Then you have room to move Ortiz in to fight the winner. So the people that are in the best position right now, in my opinion, is Matchroom. He says, I was absolutely thrilled to hear that the AIBA has suspended all the referees and officials, 36 refs and the judges of the Rio Olympics, and plan on handling the tasks better in 2020 in Tokyo. I think the Olympics have been corrupt for a long time in boxing, and finally some of the fans in attendance noticed it and were booing many of the decisions. Apparently the heavyweight gold medal bout was a glaring example. As much as I think Michael Conlon had a crude way about him, I admire the fact that he had done the courage to say exactly how he felt and called the judges out on their decisions. If he hadn't done so, and if Gary Onunte Russell's dad didn't say he didn't have the money to buy the judges, who knows if that group would have suspended a pending investigation now or not. If the IOC wants boxing fans like myself to show interest in and care about amateur boxing, the ship has to be turned around fast. New judges and referees have to be appointed, and a universal judging and refereeing criteria should be in place to cut down on mistakes made in handing out decisions to the wrong, undeserving fighter. I agree with that 100%, Sal. I mean, the judges have to be watching the same fights we're watching.
Well, of course. Sometimes you look at some of these outlandish, way across the board scorecards, and especially when you have a panel that you see at least two consistent scoring models, and you see one way out of the realm of what fight we all saw. It's difficult, and you need to really clean up. And as you were alluding to earlier, the Olympic boxing, the judging, and everything else, it's so subjective for so long, and everything else. It's hard.
All judging is terrible. And as much as I'm not a big fan of his, I really think that Teddy Atlas would make a really good man in charge of our USA boxing program. And I really wish that he would, get off his ego wagon of thinking he's such a great pro analyst and help our youth, because I think Teddy Atlas would be the man. Because of his power-hungry way and his way of the highway. I mean, I actually think that it would work very well in the amateur ranks, and maybe we could finally get our boxing teams up to snuff, because let's face it, we are nowhere near some of the other countries when it comes to the amateur boxing scene, and when they move into pros, you see why, so
it's so true, and as you reflected back, it starts from the evolution of what a fighter has to experience and gets taught, trained, and learns in the gym about those early years where he is taking on and evolving and developing his skills. Boy, I'll tell you what, you just hit a real sensitive spot. I felt warm and fuzzy, just like that last question they posed to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump last night. Do you have anything good to say about each other? And what you just said about Teddy, I'll tell you, that was very nice, because I know he appreciates any of those favoritisms that he can earn and get from you. So that was very nice. I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, it was right along.
I think you're right on.
I think it was right along. I think it was right. I think your analogy was perfect. It was right along the lines of Clinton and Trump saying nice things about each other. But Brett has a couple of more points here that I want to get to. He says, I read that Brahmer wants to rematch with Cleverly in early 2017, and his elbow injury turned out to be a muscle tear, which is good news. Brahmer knows that at 38, this is probably his last shot at the title, so I bet he would come at Cleverly with everything he has. Do you guys like the rematch? Would you rather just see Cleverly go after Stevenson or the winner of Kovalev-Ward? I personally, no disrespect to Jürgen Brahmer, I think his days have come and gone. He's been around. They've carefully moved him. Cleverly is no world beater and beat him. I know that Brahmer was on a lot of people's cards, were ahead, including the judges. I don't know, man. Maybe it is better for Cleverly to fight him again, and the winner of the rematch gets the winner of Kovalev or Ward. And as far as Adonis Stevenson, who cares about Stevenson? I really don't care much for Adonis Stevenson, and I don't even look at him as being in the mix. So I know he's got the linear title, but he's. He did look good in his last fight, but, whatever. One last thought from Brett. He says, I read that the fight between Triple G and Jacobs is going to go to a purse bid today, he's saying, which I thought that it was on the 10th. But anyway, he says, or the 12th, I'm sorry. He says, Tom Loeffler of K2 had told the WBA it's unlikely that the parties will reach an agreement and recommend that the fight goes to a purse bid. Brett says he smells a rat here. Once again, same old crap. I think Jacobs doesn't want to fight Triple G, and he's trying to price himself out of the fight. The fact that K2 recommended the purse bid shows Triple G just wants to fight and wants to get it done. Jacobs' lawyer has asked the WBC Championship Committee to reconsider the percentages on the fight, and which would... he says, which would make me think that Jacobs is trying to price himself out rather than go to a public bash of Triple G, making it to be his fault. I hope Triple G knocks out Jacobs in one round. I'm not so sure this fight is going to happen. I personally think that Jacobs is trying to avoid him. That's my thought. So thanks for the email. I got two more quick ones here, and then we got Dax coming on. This one's from Raheem. And the title, normally when I see an email from Raheem, I kind of cringe a little bit because Raheem and I kind of don't see things in the same way. But his subject on his email was Iran Barkley, a guy that we talk about a lot. He says, hey, Billy C., my father and I spent this weekend looking at some great fights, and one fighter that I got to love is Iran Barkley. What a tough fighter. And he had a ton of heart. My pops my pops loves Barkley, and so do I. Can you do a blast on him? We've done a blast on Iran the Blade Barkley, and you can check it out up on BillyCBoxing.com. Go into the blast from the past section and check it out. But he is a fighter that I love to talk about. I love Iran the Blade Barkley. Big guy, a big middleweight. I will definitely consider doing another blast on him in the near future. Thanks for the email. One final one. This one's from my man Angel from Madison, Wisconsin. He says, Pac-Man seems to be more focused on Mayweather than Jesse Vargas. Could Vargas use this as a self-motivational tool? And if Vargas wins, would this be it for Pacquiao and Mayweather in hopes of a mega payday? Of course it'll be it. If Pacquiao can't beat Jesse Vargas, and I don't mean that by making it sound like Jesse Vargas I'm taking lightly, because I think Jesse Vargas and Manny Pacquiao is a great fight. I think it shows you that Manny Pacquiao challenges himself at this stage of his career. He's definitely on the way down. He's sliding. Skill set wise, etc., etc. So fighting a young gun in Jesse Vargas is no easy task. I love the fight, and I think it's a 50-50 fight. But should Manny Pacquiao overlook Jesse Vargas and lose, you can just put a fork in the potential of a Mayweather-Pacquiao rematch ever happening. But I do believe if Mayweather sees that Pacquiao beats Jesse Vargas, it's going to be enough ammunition for him to sell a rematch with Manny Pacquiao, they will say that the arm was injured, the shoulder was injured. And that we'll see a better Pacquiao, et cetera, and both guys will make their a multi-$100 million payday again, and Mayweather will get his 50th win. So that's what I think will happen there. Joining us right now is Dax Khan with his thoughts first on Aaron Pryor and the loss of Aaron the Hawk Pryor. What's up, Dax?
Good morning. How's everybody doing today?
All right. Sal has still got his swimming suits on. He's making his way north, battling the hurricane down there.
Yeah, I hear that in the back. I'm like, wow, man, it's bad down there.
Yeah.
It's hurricane wind.
Yeah, I'm hearing it too. But I know you got an article up on BillyCBoxing.com, but quick thoughts on the passing of the Hawk.
It's definitely sad. Not only that that Aaron Pryor passed away, but recently within the last 2 years or 3 years, so many of these names that I've grown up with, and as a kid watched on TV, the guys that are the reason I became such a big boxing fan, are all just passing away one after the other. So more or less, it's your heroes, Bill, are pretty much just one by one leaving you. And in the case of Aaron Pryor, he was one of those guys who, in my life, my experiences in the sport, he was one of the few guys who helped me learn the difference, or I should say, put into perspective how away from the ring and away from the TVs, how they're just ordinary people like everybody else, like you, like me. They're not Supermen, regardless of what happens inside the ring. I mentioned in my article about going to the Hall of Fame. My two most memorable moments. One was in 1997, which was a great year. I was freelance writing at that time. That weekend, I spoke with Willie Pep, Kid Gavilan, Gene Fullamore, Benitez, Moore, Hagler, Christy Martin, Leonard, and among some others. And Pryor was sitting by himself one day. I head over, not really sure who it was because he kind of had a hat on. And once I realized it was Hagler, Pryor, I was able to sit down and speak with him for a few minutes. And he was not, the Hawk. He was just this ordinary guy who was very soft-spoken. And at that time, he was only in his 40s. And then when I brought my one son to the Hall of Fame for the first time in 2010, he went over and he's seen not only Aaron Sr., but Jr., and they were so nice to him. And at that point in time, even though he was in his mid-50s, he really seemed like he was aged, which not aged in terms of physically, but mentally. He was a more relaxed guy. He wasn't this person who was this ball of energy at all times. We know that he had a lot of substance abuse problems. He had a lot of other problems in his personal life, but the last time I seen him, he was a guy I looked at and said, this is a man who truly came full circle in his life. Could you possibly come a more complete circle in your life than somebody like Aaron Pryor, who not only was he a world champion, but at a time where there was other media darlings, so to speak, like a Ray Leonard or like a Tommy Hearns, Aaron Pryor had to actually wedge himself in there to get this attention. And even then, he still never received the attention he should have. But he managed to become a legend, and those are the reasons why you love this sport. It's not often that you have the opportunity, to see somebody come full circle like that in the sporting world. You always see them badly, whether it's baseball or football. They're always leaving the sport due to drugs, and you hear about them every now and then through a TMZ article. Aaron Pryor, managed, to go out, and he's always going to be known exactly for what he was. He was a legend in that ring, and all you can say is, thanks for what you did inside there, and you're always going to remember those.
Exactly, well put. Dax,
Well put.
some other things going on in the sport. The heavyweight division, what the hell's going on, man? What's your thoughts of all the rhetoric going on in the heavyweight division right now?
I remember when we sat, and I was sitting right next to you, and on the other side, I believe, I forget who's sitting on the other side of us, but I had said the moment that Brian Jennings went down that first time, I said, Bill, nobody's going to sign to fight this guy now. They're going to look for reasons. And afterwards, Nobody signed. The only person that fought him after the Jennings fight was Tony Thompson, and that's due to the fact Tony Thompson really had no other opportunities available for him. Eddie Hearn is right now, I think he pretty much holds the key to the heavyweight division outside of Deontay Wilder, who is slowly fading off in terms of popularity, and that WBC belt is losing its value quickly in the public's eyes. You know, Eddie Hearn has not only Anthony Joshua, he has Dillian White. Over in the UK, you have Hughie Fury, you have David Hay, whether or not he does or does not sign. You have Nathan Gorman, young guys like that. You know, we even have a Derek Chisora, who is the guy they seem to feed to all the top names over there as their showcase. So Ortiz is going to be moved along quickly. I really believe this is the best thing that could have happened in his career. He's in his mid-30s. Time is short for him. Eddie Hearn is one of the few promoters who promotes. So this is not only good for Luis Ortiz, this is good for us. And right now, if it wasn't for the UK, the heavyweight division would really be in obscurity.
Well, I agree that, he's definitely moved to a promoter that seems to be very active and putting on fights a lot, and that's good. But my point earlier that Sal and I talked about was the fact that he's kind of already established. He's technically has a belt, and he's already a big name. He fighting Malik Scott, anything could happen. He could sustain a cut that would slow him down. I think it's a waste, but I get it. But let's shift gears over to the WBC for a minute. And, the WBC issued this long-winded rule and their findings about the purse bid for the Povetkin Stavern fight, how that's got to go to purse bid, even though Don King said he's got all this interest, and he's so much interest that they're going to purse bid. And then you sprinkle in the Deontay Wilder fact that they had a provision in there stating that should he win his lawsuit, which he's decided to move forward with, which makes no sense to me at all, that even if Povetkin wins the interim belt, that he will not, they will strip him of it. To me, it just seems when you add that and then going into the middleweight division and hearing Gennady Jacobs pounding on his chest, calling out Triple G, then all of a sudden they say, okay, here you go, that's a mandatory fight. Now they're going, whoa, wait a minute, we want more money, we want the fight here, we want the fight there. It just seems like all these fighters are trying to appease the social media demand that you're right in the pulse of, and then come up with all these excuses that they again try to shove down the fans' throat, and a big percentage of them believe it. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Well, right now, what you hit on is the PBC. Right now, the PBC is in dire trouble. These names that you mentioned have relied on the PBC to be able to not only make more money than they would have at any other point in time, but to do so against subpar opponents. If the PBC should happen to fully fold, these guys will have no choice but to fight the names they haven't fought. They may win, they may not win, but point of the matter is, you're going to have to work hard for your money. It's not going to be a buffet anymore of pick and choose on what you want to do. You're not going to be able to go out there and say, I'm going to do this or I would do this. You're going to have to do that or you're not going to get a payday. Floyd Mayweather, as much as I know you're not a fan of his, but he said something very interesting recently about young fighters. It was actually an interview where he said, these young fighters today are getting paid too much. I don't know why they think they're going to have all this money and where they think they deserve it. He said, I'm going to call Al Heyman personally. These paydays will come in time, but you have to earn it. And he goes and he explains some of his early on career. He explains to, even with the Gennady fight, on how he had to literally give up a couple $1 million of his purse and go to Gaddy's hometown in New Jersey to get that fight. So Floyd really put it into perspective. We have been saying, especially you have been saying on the show, how all these fighters have been trying to follow the Floyd Mayweather blueprint. Floyd understands this, but again, as everybody else has said, and Floyd is acknowledging, fine, I want you to earn that money, but what you have to do is you have to earn it, and you have to put yourself into that position. It took Floyd Mayweather a long time to do that. And another key issue that he put out there, and I have mentioned on here before, and you have, Floyd was also a businessman who knew how to sell his fights, and he did fight top names, regardless of what even the biggest critics say. So, the PBC is what's keeping these guys alive, and if the PBC folds, you're going to see a lot less fighters, in the United States, and a lot of these guys that are holding titles are going to be gone.
Yeah, I'm going to really talk about the PBC on tomorrow's show, and some points about that, and some things that we've talked about for the last year and a half that they've been around, and a lot of it all is all coming in falling into place. But when you take the continuing on the heavyweight scene, you got the WBO. Approving the Parker-Ruiz fight. Bob Arum saying it's just about a done deal that Ruiz is going to go to the land down under to fight Joseph Parker. I mean, no disrespect to Parker or Ruiz, even though I've been pretty critical of Andy Ruiz. These guys aren't in a position where they should be fighting for a vacant title. We're talking about a vacant title. We're not talking about a title shot at an existing champion. We're talking about two fighters that arguably should be number one and number two, fighting for a vacant title that they haven't officially vacated yet. Which adds me to, which I want to add one last point. Tyson Fury, the linear champion, yes, he's dicked around Vladimir Klitschko on 2 occasions now with the rematch. But the truth is the truth. I mean, how many other fighters have hit the skids, so to speak? And, I mean, are these sanctioning bodies doing the right thing? I mean, should they issue him a champion in recess title where he gets to get his act together and then come back and fight whoever's got the belt rather than just strip him and kick him to the curb, which it seems like they all want to do? Yeah, he's been outlandish. Yeah, he's been saying some crazy stuff. But so has Donald Trump, and that's not going to sway my vote, So I don't know, man. What do you think?
That's a valid point. One, I had this discussion recently with some fans. One thing is, and a fan had brought this up, about the inactivity. It's going on a year, and that's coming very close to where he hasn't fought. I'm kind of look at some of these antics of Tyson Fury and think that they were done purposely, in terms of whether or not it's the comments to the media and so on, to where he had these problems and he was just kind of looking to buy time. I do agree with the champion in recess. We've seen it quite a bit, even though I'm not a favor of champion in recess, but it's the era we live in. Now, the thing about that is, how long can you give him? If you're going to make him a champion in recess, you have to limit that amount of time. You have to say 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever the case may be, or else you're going to hold up the division. He is not a belt holder. He is, reportedly, the top guy. Now, what's wrong with the sport and all these ratings? When you look at the major sanctioning bodies, David Hayes fought twice in about 3 or 4 years, and they were against, subpar guys. They had, quality records, but, look who they fought. You couldn't name one of their opponents, and you probably off the top of your head couldn't name the fighters he faced. And by the IBF, I believe he's ranked number 3.
No, the WBO has got him number 3. Or number 4.
The IBF, I'm looking at the ratings now. The IBF has him number 3. The WBA has him number 6. The WBC has him pretty high up there as well.
Yeah, it's a joke. That's a joke.
When these guys are ranking a fighter who's only fought a couple rounds in that many years, there's a big problem. That shows exactly how much these sanctioning bodies care, and that also tells you the state of the sport, because it really puts that emphasis on the fact that you can just appear in those ratings if you're going to put on a big fight that people are going to pay money to see. Whatever fight is going to get them the highest percentage of a sanctioned purse, and that's what's going to get you inside the ratings. The merit is pretty much off of this.
Exactly. What they're doing, and Sal, you give me your thoughts on this too. Is the fact that they're pulling exactly what the promoters are pulling, what we've been critical about promoters. They're taking a name that's recognizable in David Haye, and they're throwing him in his rankings just because it seems like an easier sell for the promoters to sell a fight, even though exactly what Dax says, I agree 150%, that David Haye doesn't deserve to be in the top 10 based on his performances and who he's fought in the last several years. Years, we're talking, not months, years. He has no business being in the top 25. And the same has to be said about a guy like Andy Ruiz Jr. Look at his resume. Who's he fought? He hasn't fought anybody. That's what these sanctioning bodies are doing. Is Sal, you with us still? I think we lost Sal.
We might have lost him. That's another reason, another conversation I had with somebody not too long ago, Bill. Probably matter of fact, it was over the weekend. Was about the O, and guys that have these 10 or 12 losses, they can't possibly be good because they have 10 or 12 losses. You know, when you look at a guy, I mentioned Derek Chisora before, when you speak about these rankings and how these guys just suddenly appear, it almost makes you say, even though somebody has 6, 7, 8 losses, and you know another guy only has 4 or 5 losses, or even 2 losses, it's a matter of who do you want to rank in there? Which ranking is more reputable? The guy that has fought quality competition and stayed active, and even though he's lost, or the guy that's only fighting once every 3 years, irregardless of the fact he's winning or losing?
No, I know. Hey, Dax, I got 2 quick things I want you to comment on, and we got to run. But number one of my top topics today is Triple G and Daniel Jacobs, and the stuff that's going on there. You know, it seems, and again, this is just my opinion based on what I'm reading in terms of facts. You know, because there's always 3 sides to the story. You know, Triple G side, Jacobs side, and then of course the truth. But it appears to me that Daniel Jacobs, after his last win, called out Triple G. The WBA basically ordered the Triple G fight. Triple G says, okay, let's get it on. And now Daniel Jacobs' team, so I'm not going to put the blame totally on Danny, but his team is trying to get the standard purse split, which is WBA, rule, changed. They want a fight before they get in the ring with each other. It seems to me that they're looking for an excuse to get out of this fight. And meanwhile, Triple G's team, K2, says, hey, forget it. You know, we've tried to make a deal with them. They're not being realistic. They're demanding too much money. Let's go to purse bid, which is an indicator to me, Dax, that they're saying, fine, we don't care who promotes the fight. We just want the fight. Is this enough proof from what you see in social media that will shut the naysayers up about Triple G, that this guy is willing, ready, and able to fight anyone that they're given, that he's given? Is this a pretty much clear indicator of that, or are they going to believe or try to twist it like Danny Jacobs is getting screwed?
No, a lot of people are frustrated with Team Jacobs. You know, one of the major debates I've been having with fans is the Triple G versus Kell Brook compared to the Canelo versus Amir Khan fight. You know, more and more people, when I explain exactly how the Kell Brook Triple G fight came about, and it wasn't, you know, in the same terms on how Canelo and Amir Khan fought, a lot of people, you know, they sit back and they say to themselves, you know, it makes more sense. They, you know, they understand what's going on and what's wrong here. And in that Floyd Mayweather interview that I mentioned, I believe part of that was directed towards Danny Jacobs and this Triple G situation, you know, stating that, you know, listen, you got to sit there. You want this big money. You got to do something to earn it. What has Danny Jacobs done to earn his mega dollars? Triple G is, you know, he's the guy in the division. You have to fight him. If you don't want to fight him, then you know what? Don't go around and beating your chest. You know, guys are waiting for Gennady Golovkin to age, and he's going to age. You know, he's in his mid-30s now, and they're looking for these weaknesses. They're looking for the moments like the Kell Brook fight, and that's when they're going to want to sign and fight him, and that's when these younger fighters are going to want to build a reputation off of, I'm the man who conquered Triple G. You know, unfortunately for Triple G, same thing with a guy like Luis Ortiz. the United States just doesn't seem to be the place to go if you want to not only make money that you deserve to make, but you want to be able to go in there and fight top quality competition that's willing. Over in the UK and other parts of the world is where it seems to be.
Well, the funny thing about it is that the PBC, which, like you indicated before, with the high purses and everything else, it has ruined the sport. Yes, it's put a lot on TV, and the short-term solution of that is we've got to watch it, which is great. But the long-term solution is what's happening now, the failure of it, these fighters not being real, being coddled and everything else. Yes, we saw some good fights, but typically they haven't been. They've been showcase fights.
Showcased,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And as far as Triple G is concerned, the only guy that I really think at this stage over the next year or two that has a legitimate chance of beating Triple G, stealing a win from Triple G, is Floyd Mayweather. And the reason why I say that is because Floyd's style, even though I'm not a fan of it, I don't like it. I can't stand it. As a matter of fact, I can't stand a fighter that runs. But that style would have Triple G trying to hunt him down all night, and Floyd could steal a win off of Triple G. I would love to see Floyd put an exclamation on his career and fight Triple G and beat him. But I think what we're going to see is, providing Pacquiao gets past Vargas, I think we're going to see a Mayweather Pacquiao 2. I said it the night of their original fight, and I still believe that it's going to happen. One last thing I wanted to ask you. The announcement that Danny Garcia is finally fighting. Everybody thought he was going to be fighting in November. Then they said December. Well, now it was announced that he's fighting in January. And the opponent is not Floyd Mayweather. The opponent is not, Errol Spence Jr. The opponent is Robert the Ghost Guerrero, Dax. And Robert the Ghost Guerrero, a fighter that I absolutely admire and like his style. I love the story of his beautiful wife overcoming cancer and all of that stuff and the pressure that was on. I dig it. All of that. I totally get it, and that's why I appreciate and respect Robert the Ghost Guerrero. However, you're looking at Danny Garcia, who's trying to convince the boxing world that he's a number one guy in the welterweight division. And he takes on Robert the Ghost Guerrero, who, if I'm not mistaken, I know he's lost his last 2. Has he lost his last 3? What gives with this? What's your thoughts, and what's the word out on the curb?
I totally, and a lot of people totally have just written Danny Garcia off. He's actually become he's actually starting to replace Adrian Broner as the subject of the memes. Especially ever since the Rod Salka fight, and that's no disrespect to Rod Salka. But Danny Garcia, in my opinion, he's been given too many gift decisions. Danny Garcia lost his titles against Mauricio Herrera. Everybody, soundly believes that outside of the Danny Garcia camp. He was given a gift decision against Lamont Peterson, and I truly and honestly believe Danny Garcia ran. It had nothing to do with the weight. Danny Garcia ran away from the 140-pound division to avoid Victor Postol and especially avoid Terrence Crawford. So that's my opinion on Danny Garcia. He's just a guy who is hoping that he can one day become some type of a superstar, and hoping he's a big name, but a superstar in terms of that he becomes the man in the sport due to the fact the fans are so easily misled, and it's not working out in his favor. One last thing before I go, and then maybe some fans could send in emails during the week, and you and Sal can discuss this. Recently, you remember we spoke about the Mike Towell situation last week, and I spoke about referee Victor Laughlin, and I spoke about the Nick Blackwell and Chris Eubank Jr. fight. Nick Blackwell has recovered, quite well. Recently, Bill, he just passed his trainer and seconds license requirements. He's going to start working corners early in January 2016. Now, I just am curious on your opinion and what other people believe. Is somebody, a young guy at 26 years old, who's been through that experience, now he's going to work a corner and be a trainer. Is this going to be something beneficial to the guys that he works with? Is he going to be able to sit there and say, and he's going to be able to see some of the stuff in fighters that, you know, these cornermen and trainers either ignore or they don't seem to see, and or as we always say, they're braver for the fighters than the actual fighters are themselves, or too brave for the fighters' own good? Or is this going to be a guy who, because of what he went through, and he sees these guys in there, they're hurt, they're getting battered, he's going to say to himself, you know what, if I dealt with it, they could deal with it?
It's a good question. I personally think that a fighter, and regardless of the age here, because let's assume he had, and I don't know this for a fact, but let's assume he had an amateur career and stuff, so even at the young age of 26, for him to become a trainer, I think it's better than a guy who or girl who is a nutritional specialist that decides to get into the sport of boxing, or an exercise specialist that decides to get into the sport of boxing, which takes place today in a lot of cases. You know, we see nutritional exercisers or you know, workout people that are becoming boxing trainers, and I think that that's a big void in our sport. I don't think a lot of young fighters are being trained properly. So I think in Blackwell's case that he will be better for a young fighter than someone, let's say, that has no pro in the ring experience. Now, as far as the safety first aspect, you know, I don't think it's fair for us to criticize a corner that ends a fight, that makes a decision to stop a fight because they're seeing something that isn't normal for their fighter. We have to assume that a trainer knows his or her fighter better than anyone else. Now, if they stop a fight way too premature, and it seems like sometimes in the past we've seen these where we assume, hey, you know, they must have just been there for a payday or whatever. I think time will tell, because those types of trainers will do it more than not, you know. I think what happens, like even if you look at a Buddy McGirt, for example, him stopping the Paulie Malignaggi fight, he was concerned with Paulie's you know, condition at that point, and I thought he made the right call. And you can't criticize him for stopping all of his fights too soon. So time will tell with Nick, but I like it overall. And like I said, it's better to be a little too safe as far as the corner. See, I'm more acceptable, Dax, of a corner being safe for their fighter than a fighter being safe. I just think a fighter being too cautious, he's in the wrong sport if that's his case. That's just my opinion.
I agree, and I actually think that I would like to see more fighters, you know, ex-fighters, irregardless of why they're not fighting anymore, you know, to be in corners, because I actually believe that they understand more than anybody who's never stepped inside a ring, you know, whether or not a guy can dig deeper, or whether or not a guy, you know, is just being too brave for his own well-being. You know, they have a perspective on it that nobody else can get. You know, a guy like and also in the mental aspect too, where they know exactly what to say to a guy in the corner. A John David Jackson type is a prime example. So I'm really interested to see how this goes on. And what I really like for him is the fact that his career was cut short due to his injury inside the ring, but he gets to stay involved in the sport, and that's something that we all know is very hard for any fighter of all ages to do, is when their career is over, to walk away from the sport. So, you know, good for him. He does get to stay involved in the sport, you know, and hopefully on a relevant basis.
I agree, and I think it's critical for the sport to have people that are boxing people stay involved. And you're right, a lot of fighters, as soon as their career is over, they distance themselves from the sport, you know, miles apart. You know, it's almost like they were ashamed that they were ever in the sport, you know, and maybe there's reasons for it. Maybe they were mistreated. Maybe they didn't like the path they took. But I think it's more important for those guys to stay involved, you know. But the thing is, Dax, and you know more than anyone, you know, the truth of the matter is you got to really want to be in this sport. If you're in it for the money, you know, that's the problem with the sport, because the greed factor is the killer of boxing. But, you know, if you really want to be in this sport and the money isn't the main focus, then this sport needs you, because we need boxing people that love the sport and care about the sport and the fighters more so than making a quick buck. And I think that seems to be the majority of the people that get involved with the sport of boxing, like a newbie, so to speak, is in it for the money. That's why we see so many ones and dones, and you know that term. We talk about that a lot, and it's unfortunate because the longevity of the sport needs boxing people in it. And I think he's going to do well, and I think his perspective on the game will be positive, and he will get better. He's young, and just like boxing, you gotta get involved to get better. So he's gonna start off at the bottom and become hopefully a good trainer, but he's not going to be a great trainer right out of the get-go. We know that.
No, of course not. But one last thing, just go to Aaron Pryor real quick. A lot of guys at all ages, no matter how long their career lasted, when they retire, they turn to other things, whether it's drinking, drugs, because they really don't know what to do with their time and they had no backup plan. Boxing has always been proven to be such a positive outlet when you're active, and when you're 26 years old and your career is cut short, that can be kind of devastating and heartbreaking. So I think, being involved in the sport would only be beneficial to Nick Blackwell personally, where he can just remain, a positive influence and always remain, mentally, in that same state of mind where I have to always be at my best, because this way I have to be a role model for those I'm around and for the young kids that come up to me.
Right, and he will get the juice that he will miss from being in the ring. He'll be in the gym. He'll get into it. Trust me. And a guy that young, it's going to be interesting to follow his career. It was a great point. I'm glad you brought it up.
Absolutely, everybody. Have a great day.
All right, Dax. Take care. That's Dax Khan. Check out his article on Aaron the Hawk Pryor, who's no longer with us. It's a sad note that we started the show with today. But, hey, tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, we're going to continue our discussion on the PBC. And believe it or not, I have some interesting quotes from a guy that I've been critical against recently, Jim Lampley. I feel that Jim Lampley has run his course with HBO, and it's time for a change. Well, he said some things about the PBC that I couldn't agree with more, that I'm going to talk about tomorrow on tomorrow's show. And hopefully Sal will be back in his normal place with no hurricane damage. He's en route now. We lost him during the show here, so I apologize for that. Make sure you drop me an email with your thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns. Billy@Talkin Boxing. That's TALKINBOXING.com. And if you take the time to write us an email, we'll take the time to read it. We're still looking for a winner of our trivia question, and the question is, what former world champion in his first professional fight defeated a man he would later beat for the world championship? What former world champion in his first pro fight defeated a man he would later beat for the world championship? Now, obviously, you know that these two fighters fought each other at least twice. The hint here is that they fought each other more than three times. And the fighter who we're looking for, the guy who won the world championship from the fighter he beat in his first pro debut, fought actively between 1940 and 1970. So if you're the first one to email me, Billy@Talkin Boxing, TALKINBOXING.com, with the correct answer, you'll win a great prize. Hey, listen, that concludes our show for today. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby.